Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Saturday, November the 21st, 2020.
I want a safe America, safe from COVID, safe from crime and looting, safe from racially motivated violence, safe from bad cops. Let me be crystal clear. Safe from 4 more years of Donald Trump. I look at this violence and I see lives and communities and the dreams of small businesses being destroyed and the opportunity for real progress on issues of race and police reform and justice being put to the test. Donald Trump looks at this violence and he sees a political lifeline. Having failed to protect this nation from the virus that has killed more than 180,000 Americans so far, Trump posts an all-caps tweet screaming law and order to save his campaign. One of his closest political advisors in the White House doesn't even bother to speak in code. She just comes out and she says it. Quote, the more chaos, violence, the better it is for Trump's reelection. Just think about that. This is a sitting president of the United States of America. He's supposed to be protecting his country, but instead he's rooting for chaos and violence.
On this episode of The Politicrat, Joe Biden, how he won and how he ran. Coming up next. Welcome back. So I just want to actually present this brief overview before getting to the campaign itself. Now, Joe Biden had run for president on 2 prior occasions, once in 1987 for the 1988 presidential race, and once in 2007 for the 2008 presidential race. In 1987, he had to bow out because of the plagiarism that he got caught with, plagiarizing texts from Neil Kinnock's speeches. Neil Kinnock at the time had been, or prior to that time, or during that time, was the Labour Party leader in the United Kingdom. So Joe Biden had to drop out. In 2008, his campaign never really gained any traction at all. And after, I think, a couple of the primaries, he really did not register and had to drop out of his campaign in 2008. Then, later in 2008, you may remember, during the summer of that year, Barack Obama named Joe Biden to be his vice presidential running mate. And the rest was history. Joe Biden served as vice president for 8 years and did not just sit there as a potted plant. He actually got involved in a lot of very important things, spearheaded the economic recovery, saved the auto union, auto workers, and automated jobs in the auto industry. Really spearheaded a lot of very important things. So he really did work. He did not just sit there as a potted ceremonial plant. Then came 2016. And after Barack Obama's 8 years, everybody was wondering, well, since you are vice president, Joe Biden, are you going to run? I mean, because Al Gore ran in 2000 after his boss, Bill Clinton, served 8 years. Of course, and Gore served those 8 with him as his vice president. And Gore ran. What about you, Joe Biden, Mr. Vice President? Are you going to run? And he didn't make a decision on that until, I guess it was sometime in maybe April or May or June of 2016, whenever it was. Could have been April. And his son, Bo, had died the year before, 2015. He was extremely close to Bo. I think that's probably, of all of his children, is probably the closest to Bo Biden. And it was awful what happened. Bo Biden passed away. He had this horrible disease. I don't remember the pronunciation. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm not going to pronounce it. He was a war hero, served honorably for the military, a hero. He had a Bronze Star and other commendations. Served in Afghanistan, if not Iraq, or both, and served well. He died in 2015. And then the question was, well, in the media as well, are you going to run, Mr. Vice President? He held a press conference in the Rose Garden with President Obama and Second Lady Jill Biden. And Joe Biden decided, I'm not going to run in 2016. And I kind of sensed that he would make that decision. But I think the reason he also didn't want to run was I don't want to say just, in addition to the passing of Beau Biden, I think the field was cleared for Hillary Clinton. And I think that the Democratic National Committee made it so. And I think that Barack Obama, quite frankly, made it so. I believe, I don't know, I'm speculating here. I believe that he, Obama, and Clinton made a deal that, well, yes, since I lost to you in the very, very close and contentious primary in 2008, I am going to provide this offer to you. What about if you name me as Secretary of State in your administration, and I will campaign for you, I will go out there for you, I will be out there for you. But also to the DNC, I want you, DNC, to make it so that I am the front runner in 2016. And I do think conversations like that happened. That's my speculation. I definitely think that the conversation about the Secretary of State happened. That was definitely a negotiated thing. I think Barack Obama writes about this whole process in his book, and I still have yet to finish the book. I just started reading it. A Promised Land is the name of the book. A Promised Land, which is a big book, 700 plus pages, and it costs nearly $50. So if you're someone who is not inclined to shell out $50 for anything these days, particularly since you don't have your stimulus money that you should be getting your second portion of it at best here, at least, then you probably want to wait till you can read it listen to it on audiobooks or on Audible, which, by the way, you can listen to this podcast now on Audible, audible.com, audible.com. So I just want to let you know that you can listen to the Politicrat podcast every day on Audible for free of charge. But I think these conversations went on in Obama land and Clinton land, and voila, the field was fairly clear for Hillary Clinton in 2016. It was a coronation, if you will. And since Joe Biden was not going to run, there was literally only two other people who did run. Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, the progressive, and, of course, Martin O'Malley, the former governor of the state, I believe, of Maryland. And that was really all that Hillary Clinton had to take on, although Bernie was a very, very formidable challenger to her. And I, of course, I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I have vehement disagreements with some of the things he does and says. Some of the inner circle I do not like because there's no diversity in that inner circle. There's no inclusion. There aren't any black people making decisions. Bernie Sanders does not like to talk about race. He's really uncomfortable. He just throws out standard lines and he doesn't go deeper. He doesn't. Elizabeth Warren is much better at talking. I've always said this when it comes to this campaign that just went by. The best candidate who talked about race and the most honest talking, who talked about it honestly and about in terms of it institutionally and about racism rather, and how black folks were affected structurally and all of that, really talking about it, was Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren was the only candidate that really did that in a really meaningful way. I think most of the rest of them were just throwing lines at us. Senator Warren was not. So the bottom line is that back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won. We know all the controversy and all the circumstances that we have a real problem with at that convention. What happened? The will of the people was overturned. at the convention. The superdelegates did that. The Democrats have a lot of contempt for the ordinary voter. We know that. Republicans do too. They just lie to their voter and they scare them. So that's their contempt for their voter. But the Democrats, in terms of contempt for their voters, it's to undercut them, cut them off at the knees, have superdelegates invalidate their votes in all these states, as did happen in 2016 in Philadelphia, no less, at the convention. How about that for irony, Alanis Morissette? But what happened here, in addition, as we fast forward now, Hillary Clinton, we know what happened in 2016. Joe Biden was waiting in the wings. And Joe Biden waited patiently. And bang, 2017 happened, Charlottesville. And that commercial that you heard the audio from really did set the tone. Well, you're going to hear the audio from it soon. You didn't hear it yet, but you're going to. I played something earlier that was from this year's campaign, from a couple months ago when he spoke as the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. But you're going to hear these two things that I'm going to play. So he waited. 2017 plays an important role here, and I'll tell you why in a few short moments. But also, there are all of these allegations in the meantime that have come up about Joe Biden. Women who were very uncomfortable with the way he behaved amongst them. He behaved very, very poorly, to say the very least. Assault, battery, not in terms of punching someone, which is horrible enough, of course, but the touching. Just shouldn't be touching women that he does not know. Like, he shouldn't touch a woman who is not his wife in the ways that he was touching women, many women, over the years. And of course, Tara Reid, who I will talk about briefly and shortly in a few moments. I did a podcast episode on Tara Reid. And you can go back to April of this year, around April 10th, 11th, 12th, or 13th, around there. And I talk about Tara Reid. I support Tara Reid. I believe Tara Reid to this very day. And that's not going to ever change. So I want to put that out there. And then I want to go to deal with these allegations or speak about them, because there were a number of women who had said, Joe Biden is very creepy. This guy is beyond inappropriate. He's putting his hands on my hair, his hand on my head. He's put his fingers in my hair. Who does that? Other than somebody who, there's lots of names for that. But none of them is correct or right or appropriate. Those aren't the three names I would use for any of those kinds of things that Joe Biden did. And so there was one official, a politician, or someone in political office or something, I forget her name, a Latina, who held a press conference. She got attacked all over the place, which was just disgusting that she was attacked. And said that, Joe Biden did this. He put his hands here, he put his hands there, his hands on my neck, around my neck, or by the back of my neck, and my hair, and whoa, what the hell? So the bottom line is that in 2019, April the 3rd of that year, last year, it's incredible. This was only a year and a half plus ago. April 3rd, before he had even announced anything, Joe Biden on Twitter decided to do this.
The coming month, I expect to be talking about a whole lot of issues, and I'll always be direct with you. But today I want to talk about gestures of support and encouragement that I've made to women and some men that have made them uncomfortable. And I always tried to be, in my career, I've always tried to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been. It's the way I've tried to show I care about them and I'm listening. And over the years, knowing what I've been through, the things that I've faced, I've found that scores, if not hundreds of people have come up to me and reached out for solace and comfort, something, anything that may help them get through the tragedy they're going through. And so it's just who I am. And I've never thought of politics as cold and antiseptic. I've always thought it about connecting with people. As I said, shaking hands, hands on the shoulder, a hug, encouragement. And now it's all about taking selfies together. Social norms have begun to change. They've shifted. And the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. I hear what they're saying. I understand it. And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility, and I'll meet it. But I'll always believe governing, quite frankly, life for that matter, is about connecting with people. That won't change, but I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space. And that's a good thing. I've worked my whole life to empower women. I've worked my whole life to prevent abuse. I've written, and so the idea that I can adjust to the fact that personal space is important, more important than it's ever been, is just not thinkable. I will.
That was Joe Biden there from April the 3rd, 2019. That was a video he put on Twitter, on his current Twitter account, @Joe Biden. And it's still up. I'll provide a link to it. And it was just incredible. There was a very visceral split right down the middle on Twitter and beyond about the video, that he did not provide any kind of specific apology, but did say he changed his behavior. And I think that's very important, that he did say he would change his behavior. And so that's what he did on April 3rd, 2019. And should he have said sorry? I think he should have apologized, but he didn't. And I wasn't happy that he didn't, but he didn't. Then, after we saw that, just 3 weeks later, just 3.5 weeks later.
Charlottesville, Virginia is home to the author of one of the great documents in human history. We know it by heart. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. We've heard it so often, it's almost a cliche, but it's who we are. We haven't always lived up to these ideals. Jefferson himself didn't, but we have never before walked away from them. Charlottesville is also home to a defining moment for this nation in the last few years. It was there on August of 2017 we saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. And they were met by a courageous group of Americans, and a violent clash ensued. And a brave young woman lost her life. And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. I wrote at the time that we're in the battle for the soul of this nation. Well, that's even more true today. We are in the battle for the soul of this nation. I believe history will look back on 4 years of this president and all he embraces as an aberrant moment in time. But if we give Donald Trump 8 years in the White House, he will forever and fundamentally alter the character of this nation, who we are, and I cannot stand by and watch that happen. The core values of this nation, our standing in the world, our very democracy, everything that has made America America is at stake. That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. Folks, America's an idea that's stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It gives hope to the most desperate people on earth. It guarantees that everyone is treated with dignity and gives hate no safe harbor. It instills in every person in this country the belief that no matter where you start in life, there's nothing you can't achieve if you work at it. That's what we believe. And above all else, that's what's at stake in this election. We can't forget what happened in Charlottesville. Even more important, we have to remember who we are. This is America.
That's Joe Biden's campaign ad, his introduction to the 2020 race back on April the 25th, 2019. We got into, the primaries and, all of that. And then again, we got to February and the very pivotal vote in South Carolina. And then we got to, Super Tuesday, and we had all these people falling in line with Biden. And all the moderates went with Biden. That left only Bernie, Biden, and Elizabeth Warren. They were the only three people really principally left. So this is what happened. I mean, it was the machine that said, hey, look, you're done. And this was Bernie's campaign funeral. His campaign funeral was March the 2nd of 2020. And when all these folks dropped out at the behest of the DNC and President Obama, making the phone calls and all of that, it was over for Bernie. That was when it was the beginning of the end. And Super Tuesday, which was the very next day, they had the big rally on March the 2nd in Dallas or wherever it was in Texas. Beto O'Rourke was there. Pete Buttigieg was there, and maybe someone else, I don't know. Amy Klobuchar was there. And then there was Joe Biden, and that was that. They all closed ranks around him. That's what the DNC did. That's what they did. They decided, why didn't they close ranks around Bernie? He had more delegates at the time. If they were really committed to doing that, why didn't they close ranks around Bernie? They didn't. He had more delegates than Joe Biden did at the time. This is before Super Tuesday happened, the day before. But they all closed ranks around the centrist candidate, the corporate candidate. I mean, it was incredible. And a lot of people were very upset because they knew what this was. This was the DNC doing this. And it was country hardball politics, dirty politics, not illegal politics, dirty politics. And it happens. And this is what the machine does. And it's perfectly okay to do this, right? There's no rule or law against it. This is how politics is. Look at all the battles of the past. Look at you want to look at some hardball. Look at the stuff that went on between Ted Kennedy and Jimmy Carter in 1980. Oh my God, look at how that turned out. Look at the stuff that happened on the convention floor in the Republican Party in 1976 between Ford and Reagan. Oh my God. And I can go back way before that for internecine fighting, all this internecine warfare inside political parties. This is not a monopoly in the Democratic Party. You have Republicans who've done this bitter fights on the convention floor. I mean, there was some real protesting going on in 1976 in the convention there between Reagan and Gerald Ford. Oh my God. That went on for days, 2 or 3 days. It was a brokered convention, essentially. It was really bitter. It was a civil war in that party, in the Republican Party. We are given this impression, the Republicans, there's no infighting. There is infighting. There's infighting in any political party. And it doesn't matter if they're Democratic, Republican, Conservative, Labor, whomever, there's progressives. You don't think there's infighting amongst progressives? Oh my God, come on. There's plenty of that. When you have people and you have passion and you have politics and you have power, people, passion, power, politics, you're going to have dissension. In fact, even without a lot of those things, you're going to have inevitable different points of view, approach, everything in any political party. So the bottom line is that Bernie's campaign funeral was held, R.I.P., March 2nd, 2020. And nobody went to that funeral, by the way, because they were all busy on the Biden bandwagon. And Biden ran the table, as I talked about, I will say it now. He ran the table in that Super Tuesday. And they slow walked the Bernie win in California. The media, this is too close to call, or this is too early to call. Too early to call. It was 65% of the vote in. Bernie had an 8% lead. Give me a break. 2%, too early to call? 65% of the vote in? 8-point lead Bernie? I don't think so. So that was the corporate news media. Again, blunting any momentum that Bernie would get from winning California, because that's a huge prize, biggest in the country. Oh, my state of California, thank you. Biggest in the country, right? Biggest prize. So they slow walked that, and all these other Biden victories eclipsed that. And then about, a week later, they declared Bernie the winner of California. Or 3 days later when no one cared anymore. And that was it. Bernie was done. He hung up his boots on April the 8th, 2020. And then literally 5 days after that, April 13th, he endorsed Biden. People were carping. There are more moderate Democrats who were in the intervening time after the Super Tuesday, for about 5 weeks, almost 5 weeks, for 4 weeks, they were carping. And I understand that. Bernie, why don't you drop out? Why don't you drop out? In fact, I came around to that as well as a progressive. I said, Bernie, I think it's time for you to move on now here. We've got a pandemic here. We need to have a centralized focus. And that's my reason for literally a week before he dropped out, me saying, I think it's time for you to start to move on here. And we need to have a singular opponent now against Donald Trump. And he paid attention to people who were saying these kinds of things, because literally on April 8th, he dropped out, suspended his campaign. Then 5 days after that, got together on a call with Joe Biden. You can still find that on YouTube. And he talked about joining forces with Joe Biden. You had the Sunrise Movement. They had negotiations. Bernie's people and Biden's people had negotiations. And bang, that happened. Sunrise Movement endorsed Joe Biden. I mean, I don't like the whole thing that's going on now in the EPA pick, apparently. This guy who is, won't recuse himself from these issues with these chemical companies who do some really unholy things, and these toxic products and all this, that he had been involved in. And that is a real problem. We have to keep vigilant on all of this stuff. No honeymoons for this administration. No honeymoons. I mean, people talk about the first 100 days. For me, my honeymoon's going to be the first 2 weeks. I mean, seriously, this country is in such effed up shape, and has been forever, for a minute, is that 2 weeks only. 2 weeks. You get 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And that's pretty much it, right? And then we even before that, we have to start putting an agenda together and really putting our issues out there. I've talked about this before. What are your issues? What are the issues that you find to be compelling for you? So, and then get together with people, coalesce. You use the tool of Zoom if you have an internet access. If you don't, use your text. Use your FaceTime, whatever you might have. Hopefully you have one of those. Zoom or something, internet access, your laptop. And let's, you interface with people. Let's get this going. We've got so much power right now. You might not think you do, but you do. Why? Because you hold sway. There's a new administration that's going to eventually be sworn in on the 20th, 60 days from now. And you can put your agenda out there on the table for them. Here's what I want. Here's what we'd like. We are a group. We are a movement. Put together a movement. And let's push. There's movements out here, Black Lives Matter. And this is what transformed Joe Biden. Joe Biden, he fought off Kate Bedingfield held put out a statement. It wasn't even a press conference, a statement about Joe Biden and the allegations made by Tara Reid. And I've done numerous episodes about this. And you can go back and listen to them. Back in April, I did an episode about Tara Reid and about Joe Biden. And the thrust of what I was saying is that I supported Tara Reid, and I still do, and believed her 100%, and I still do. And I went into all these things that I think you should still go back and listen to if you have a chance. Because this is, the fact that Joe Biden is in office does not remove any of these other things. People are a full slate or a complete slate or a slate, right? In progress or not. And that is an important, there's many important episodes of this podcast that I have done. Here I go on my high horse. But I think that is an important one. That's one of the important ones. That one I did on Tara Reid. Kate Bedingfield, who is the press director campaign press director for Joe Biden, put out a statement about, no, Joe Biden, these allegations are completely false, and that's all we're going to say. Well, it wasn't all you were going to say, because then a few short weeks later, Joe Biden made this remarkable appearance on Morning Joe. By the way, a very friendly area on MSNBC, or as Donald Trump once called them and still calls them, MSDNC. And he's actually not far off on that, I hate to say, but he is absolutely on target there. God, even a broken clock, right? So he was on there for 15 minutes with Mika Brzezinski, and she actually did a pretty good job, I think, of getting of asking these questions. And I don't know whether he got the questions in advance or not. I don't think he did. This wasn't like Donald Trump. Oh, actually, he didn't get them in advance either when Mika and Joe. But I'm going to link to that too. There's a lot of things I'm going to link to in this episode in the liner notes, and you will see this. It's quite remarkable, and she does press him. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you rape Tara Reid? I mean, she comes out and asks, to her credit, does the journalistic job. And the whole thing with the records and release, and then there were some media articles, and then it pretty much, by the time we got to the end of May, because that was May 1st of this year. Can you believe that was the same calendar year? Oh my God. Because this pandemic was swirling. But by the end of that month and into early June, by the time we got to late May, early June, after Memorial Day, you heard not another word, at least in the corporate news media, in the progressive media otherwise. And Tara Reid is also on Twitter, by the way. But the bottom line is that there were a lot of articles, even in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other places. CNN covered this to their credit. They put this out there as the issue that Joe Biden's got to be, that they litigated that in the sense that they put it out there in that way when I say that. So that was on the table. That was absolutely, and I'm glad that the media finally, it only took them 3 months. It only took them 3 blooming months. Tara Reid had been talking about this for months. I think she first came out about this in early January of this year. And it took till April and May for the corporate news media to really start talking about this. And they only did it after Bernie dropped out. That's the thing that many of us observed, is that after April 8th, when Bernie formally suspended his campaign, then you start to see these articles about Joe Biden and Tara Reid. Did he, these allegations of rape that Tara Reid is making, did Joe Biden do this? And of course, these allegations have been made prior to April the 8th. They were out there before then, but the media said nothing. It's like the corporate news media. It's not funny. This is a very serious issue. The corporate news media was silent. And then after Bernie dropped out, now the New York Times, literally it was that like 2 days after he dropped out of the race. And by that weekend, there was articles in the Washington Post, and the New York Times, LA Times, CNN started running things. MJ Lee reported on this a lot, did numbers of reports on this, and someone on MSNBC did the same. And then you had what happened with Mika talking to Joe Biden on the air May 1st, and boom. And then it was done away with. And there were people calling saying there should be investigations. Those investigations have not come up with anything. Or rather, I should say, there hasn't been an investigation. Not that I know of. It's not that they've not turned up anything. It's that there's not been an investigation. To the best of my knowledge, not a single one. And that's still out there as we head into close to December, as we head toward Thanksgiving, in quote. Bottom line here is that that disappeared by June. And it was all about this pandemic. And you know why it also disappeared? One of the biggest reasons is because on May 25th of this year, George Floyd was murdered, executed. And that was what we all rightfully focused on. And before that, and we hadn't heard about it, much of us outside of Kentucky hadn't, Breonna Taylor got assassinated in her own home, in the middle of the night, in her bed, assassinated by police. And before that, Ahmaud Arbery, February of this year. All of these things happened, and these things fed the narrative. Actually, these things did not hurt Joe Biden. Put it this way. And his campaign commercial that I played you earlier, where he said we have to restore the soul of the nation in Charlottesville, these events continue to crystallize that. And these things have been going on way before his campaign commercial too, hundreds of years before. And we saw this all played out. Rayshard Brooks played out, right? Jacob Blake played out, and I hope that brother is improving. Mr. McAtee played out. All of these and others that we know less about who got killed by police, murdered by police, you know. Then you had what happened in Kenosha with Adam Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse. Do you know that over $2 million has been donated to him? Over $2 million. He killed 2 people on a video. You actually see that. And it wasn't even in self-defense in one of them, maybe both of them. He turned around and killed these 2 people and said so on video. Shot off the arm of another and was allowed to walk. And he still hasn't been brought to any kind of justice, really. That's just crazy. Crazy. $2 million. I mean, probably has been doing it, but he's not been anyway. 17-year-old white terrorist, murderer, Trump supporter. So all these things happen and more, and the pandemic. Joe Biden was the so-called right person at the right time. Whatever you judge right to be. There was a big movement. The Black Lives Matter movement was reignited, and it was always here, right? It's been here for 400 years, Black Lives Matter. It just wasn't called that in the 1600s. But this was a huge thing. And this is the movement that Joe Biden had to tap into. He had to. Any politician that's smart has to know how to do that. Joe Biden did it. He tapped into that movement, and he started to meet with people. He met with the families of all of the people. Ahmaud Arbery's family met with Breonna Taylor's family too, or spoke to them. He spoke to, Jacob Blake's family, met with them in person. Spoke to George Floyd's family. I believe he met with them in person as well. And built part of his campaign around that. He also focused on saying, no, we don't want violence. No, we don't want extremism or white supremacy. And no, we don't want killings of black people by police. And so he harnessed that. The movement made it easier for him to tap into that, because there were protests all over the country. This is what politicians do. They see opportunity. They see which way the wind is blowing, and they cast their net out there. I mean, I'm not talking about it as in terms of the Alvin Toussaint, cast your fate to the wind type of thing. I'm talking about they see opportunities to politicians, and they make that call. They go where the wind blows. So where the public sentiment was clear. And all the more convenient for Joe Biden, because that was his campaign. That's where he started to run. That first commercial that I played you, or the first one of his campaign in 2019, right? When he said in April of that year that we need to come together to restore the soul of the nation, which is, by the way, something lifted from John Lewis. John Lewis said that a lot. We need to restore the soul of the nation. And, and then now we had all these things. That's right. John Lewis passed away this year. RBG passed away this year, right? C.T. Vivian passed away this year. Reverend Joseph Lowry. This was a movement. So this movement grew and grew. You had women's groups. You had black people. You had white people. You had Latinx, Asian, straight, gay, non-gender conforming, trans, everybody. This is a year that over 36, I think 37 trans people have been murdered in this country this year alone, and most of them black trans women. I mean, so there was all these things going on, and Joe Biden said things like, I'm a transitional candidate. He was genuflecting to the movement. He was genuflecting to white America that he might be the last white male president, before we transition to what we're going to see a lot more of in the coming years and decades, black and brown people running for the highest office in the land and being elected to it. It's going to happen again. And Kamala Harris is now in this position. We saw what happened in August. Black women had been telling Joe Biden for the better part of the year, of this 2020 year, particularly since, for the better part of 2-3 months after what happened with George Floyd, you've got to put a black woman as your VP, mate. You cannot have Amy Klobuchar, because Amy Klobuchar was the leading candidate. And Elizabeth Warren wanted that thing so bad, and that's one of the reasons I think she didn't drop out. But I still think she's going to have a really good spot in this administration. And it could be Treasury. It could be. We'll see. I really do think it's going to be Treasury for Elizabeth Warren. But we shall see. We could know that in the next few days, before Thanksgiving or after. I think it's going to be before. I think we're going to get to know that maybe Monday or Tuesday of this week. I think Monday we're going to hear about who that pick is. Joe Biden's already made the decision. He said he made the decision with Kamala Harris last week. And I think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. But we'll see. I was wrong before, wasn't I, when I said, Susan Rice will be the VP pick. Susan Rice will not be the VP pick. I was wrong. But Susan Rice may well play a part in this administration. So anyway, the point is that you had Kamala Harris making history, selected as the first black female vice president, first South Asian to be picked in that role. Now she's going to become the first female vice president. She's going to become the first black female vice president, the first South Asian vice president, and the first South Asian female, and also the first Californian in the Democratic ticket ever to be in the White House. The only others that I can think of who were Californians were both Republicans. Ronald Reagan, who technically was born in Illinois. He was born in Illinois, not technically born. He was born in Illinois, but he adopted California as his home state, became California governor. And of course, Richard Nixon. I can't think of any other Californians. I could be wrong if there are any others, but those are the two. So a lot of history being made. And then the campaign, and then the continuation of these themes. And then they went through the debates. Joe Biden kept that steady focus on the basics. End this virus, or at least slow this virus down and contain this virus and get rid of it by practicing mask wearing, physical distancing, and not being in groups of people. He reiterated that. And the biggest reason he won was black voters and focusing on the coronavirus. Those are the two reasons that Joe Biden won that election. And not only won it, as I predicted he would, and I predicted that he would win it back in April. And I predicted he'd win it in a landslide in April. And I proved to be correct, because he's now up by over 6 million votes. He now has 51 point something percent of the vote. He now has 306 electoral college votes, which is a landslide, to 232. A landslide isn't about necessarily the fact that you won 49 states and the other person won 1. That's a landslide. But a landslide also, but the number of states you win has got nothing to do with it. It's the electoral college and the kinds of states you win. You can win 30, 25 states, but if you're winning all these states with 5 electoral college votes, that ain't worth a damn. Then if you're winning California, winning Florida, Texas, Georgia, think about it, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. I mean, if you're winning those states, you've won the election. And Joe Biden won almost all of those states I just read out, but 3. Florida, I think I included in there. The 3 he didn't win were Florida, Texas, and I don't know. There was another one, I think. But the point is that this is what happened. Joe Biden stayed on message. Jen O'Malley Dillon's got to be given a big amount of credit because she came into this thing on March of 2020 and steered this ship very, very well. Very, very well indeed. And she now going to have a position in the cabinet as the deputy chief of staff. I think that's a very good position for her. I think she can go even higher than that, but that's a lot of power. That is a good thing. And she's richly deserving of it. There are other people that she's credited. There's a woman, I think her name's Olivia, or whatever, who was really good with the statistics and got the metrics, understood the numbers, got the numbers right, had these internal numbers that were very important. The way Joe Biden campaigned was very good. I wanted him to reach out more to black people and Latinos, and he did in many ways, but the thing is, the truth is, this victory also belongs to the countless organizers, Stacey Abrams, Chuck Rocha, Maria Teresa Kumar, and so many other people, the youth movements, the Sunrise Movement, who got people together, who got the young people to come out and vote, and really propelled this victory. Young people, black people, Latinx, Native Americans, and seniors. Those were the key, particularly black and Latino voters and the youth. These 3 groups, black people first and foremost, Latinx, and the youth vote after that, they were the key group, the core, that got Joe Biden this victory. So now we have to find out, but push our agenda, and we'll wait and see. But we're going to be active. We have to be active. We can't go home. But Joe Biden ran an incredibly good campaign, considering coronavirus, considering everything with that. He was ridiculed about being in his basement when the guy who was in his basement was Donald Trump, playing golf in a bunker, making only 2 public appearances, 3 if you include Veterans Day, where he didn't say a word, utter a syllable, which is rare for him. While on Twitter, he's doing all this tweeting and talking. But 3 public appearances in 3 weeks. I mean, seriously, you're not running Jack, and you're not running Joe or Kamala either, because they're running you out of the White House come January 20th. The debate performances, it was just a joke with Trump. Biden did very well in both debates, even though in the first debate, it was just a disaster because Trump was crapping all over everything. Biden still was able to make it through that 4th wall to the American public. It was very important, and he made it clear. But the second debate that they had was even better, much better. Biden was sharper, stronger, clearer, straight to the camera, while Trump was sputtering and lying and kissing up to the Proud Boys and telling them that he was their captain. And you have to stand back. This was all a show. Remember when we were told, they're going to go riot? And they may yet still do that. But so far, have you seen these big riots and all this stuff from these racists? I mean, I'm sure that there are some out there doing things, but have you seen that yet? It was all to scare voters. We had early voting. It was massive. I was so this important thing I kept saying about voting early. It was so critical to this election. And look where we are now. Look where we are. History was made. We've got lots of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. This garbage from Trump right now is a little boy who knows that his time is up. And all the screaming and shouting he does through his ridiculous people, it's all a reality TV show now, isn't it? Just like it was when it started in 2015 for Donald Trump. It was a reality TV show, actors being paid, people being paid $50 a pop. I doubt that they even got that money yet because he's a scam artist, but if they did, I hope your $50 was worth 4 years of destruction of this country. Blast. But the point I'm making is that this is the arena, and Joe Biden was able to, with the wisdom and experience that he had, to navigate all of this. And the DNC's convention completely whitewashed Joe Biden's record. They did not mention a thing about anything negative. It was about the crime bill and about, Violence Against Women specifically act that he did in 1994. And that was basically it. And a couple other things. But all these votes, voting for the Iraq War, they completely eliminated that. So no voter. And by the way, again, I don't think most voters vote on record. They vote on issues pertaining to what's immediate to them, but they also vote on likability. They vote on whether they can trust. That I think is the core of the American voter. They vote on issues, I think sometimes, but not all the time. But the people who really care do vote on the issues. The people who just vote. And they vote on things that are, and they care too, but a lot of the times I think there are people, I've said this before, who vote on things that are less about issues. But there are people who vote for all kinds of reasons. That's what I'm saying. And the bottom line is that Joe Biden had a steady, clear message. Build back better. That was about building back infrastructure, building back the economy, but not just restoring the economy to where it was before. It was building it back to get it to somewhere even better than where it is or where it was. And that's the mistake Hillary Clinton made. She was very incrementalist in her campaign. That was her campaign. Joe Biden was not an incrementalist in his campaign, even though he wasn't for Medicare for all. And that would perhaps call him an incrementalist there. But he didn't run his campaign like that. He did not run his campaign like that. He did not run his campaign as an incrementalist. He ran it as a healer. He ran it as someone who could bring people together and as someone that you could trust. And you could restore this country to some kind of decency in the eyes of the world, not much less the country. And because Joe Biden had 50 years of experience, he was trusted. Because he had been in an administration for 8 years, he had been trusted. Because he had been seen and his positives were a lot higher than Trump's and a lot higher than Hillary Clinton's for that matter. And because he was an empathetic figure, at least that's how the DNC framed him. And that's how he has, look, whether you like Joe Biden a lot or not, or like his record or not, and I'm not a fan of his record at all. I'm not. But I knew what time it was when it was time to vote this November. There was no chance. You can't sit out. I've never sat out any election. And there's no way you could have voted for Donald Trump here. A guy that's killed 250,000 people, really? Lies 225,000 times. All the stuff he says and does and divides. It's ugly. How could you vote for that with a real conscience? Unless you're a racist. Come on. And the bottom line is that Joe Biden had this message that Hillary Clinton didn't. And Joe Biden had a message about coronavirus. He had a message of trust. He had an empathetic figure about him. He knows what loss is. Just like there's 250,000 families know what loss is, right? So he had a connection to them already. Lost his son, lost his daughter, lost his first wife, lost his mother. And so that was a narrative that worked effectively for him. And it was played in to everything. So it wasn't just this politician looking for your vote. Here's who you're voting for. You're voting for a person, right? And that's what that was. The Biden campaign, scrubbed the record. Forget the 50 years of whatever, that was not good, of centrist policies and of really working with Republicans to do some bad things to the American public. Forget that. There's a book called Yesterday's Man by Branko Lukatic that I've often put out. I talked about it as recently as October on Twitter. And you won't find, well, I won't go there. I made a very conscious effort to get people, and I was not the only one. Many of us made, let me just put it this way, many of us made a really strong effort to get people to vote for Joe Biden. Many of them did. Many of us did. And people listened, thank God. And so many people out here did the work to get him in. And now we want our returns. We have a mandate. And Joe Biden ran on these issues that were going to resonate with the American public. And they did. You had a clear contrast It couldn't have been clearer. It was even clearer than the last time. In 2016, I mean, the contrast was even clearer because what clouded Hillary Clinton was the fact that, rightly or wrongly, people didn't like her. Her unfavorables were very high, just like Trump's were. And people had had enough of the Clintons, and, you know, Hillary Clinton was not liked. Yes, was there misogyny in some of this? Absolutely. I also want to add that there are things about Hillary Clinton that are not very likable. Just like there are things about Joe Biden that are not very likable, about Barack Obama that are not very likable in terms of their policies. And some of the arrogance and the attitude that comes with those things. All three of them, by the way. And I purchased all their books. Well, but Biden's I have not purchased. But I got Obama. I own all three of Obama's books. I'm sure some of you do too. I own at least one of Hillary Clinton's books. I voted for Hillary Clinton 2 or 3 times. In Senate, when in New York in the Senate, voted for her in primaries. One primary. Yeah, 2008 I voted for her in the primary. So, I mean, come on, tell me that I will vote for the Democrat. Even if I have some disagreements with him, and I have disagreements with all those people I just mentioned. I have disagreements with Bernie. I still didn't stop me from voting for him. And the movement is not about Bernie anymore. The progressive movement is not centered about one person. It's centered around people. And we have people now. The AOCs of the world, the Ilhan Omars, the Rashida Tlaibs, the Ayanna Presleys, who are going to be leading that fight. The Jamal Bowmans of the world, the Cori Bushes of the world. These are the people who are the movement now. These are the people they are people who are going to be a major part of this movement, and that's where this is headed. I told you, black women and Latinas are going to be the face of this progressive movement. And that's what you're seeing happen. And Joe Biden recognizes that. He's put someone who's not a progressive, but someone who, she's corporate, but she's someone who has convictions about black folk. And she will talk about black people. And I know people here in San Francisco, well, she put people... That stuff was not true, by the way. I found out that was not true about her doing these things, throwing people behind bars willy-nilly. And it's funny because I'm here in San Francisco and I didn't even know her record 100%. But that stuff that people were saying about her ain't true. Now, it is true that the foreclosure king, Steve Mnuchin, who's now rolling back programs, coronavirus aid programs for businesses and whatnot, he's doing that right now. She did not prosecute him. That is a fact. The foreclosure king of California, Steve Mnuchin, who is now the Treasury Secretary for another 60 days. But the point is that Joe Biden tapped into this movement and he seized the opportunity to do that. And gently, he didn't proclaim to be the Messiah. He even said that. He didn't. I'm not the Messiah. I'm not this activist. And he said, I'm not this socialist. And that's all. And it's true. He's not. He's the most corporate centrist candidate, arguably one of the weakest Democratic candidates, quite frankly. If you look at the field that you had there, Joe Biden was not the one who popped out at you, who jumped out at you. Who jumped out at me? You had people like Bernie. You had people like Kamala Harris. You had people like Buttigieg. You had people like Andrew Yang. You had people like Julian Castro. You had people like, I could go on and on, right? These are the people who I would have probably looked at before Joe Biden, right? All of these people were eminently stronger. Elizabeth Warren, if I didn't mention her name, oh my God. Elizabeth Warren, if I didn't mention your name, or if I've repeated it, I'll say it again. These are all very strong candidates. And I think all of them would have beaten Donald Trump. It may have been closer, though. But Joe Biden absolutely blew this out of the water. And, he's not a socialist. He made it very clear. And they ran all these scare campaigns against him. And he just reacted calmly, right? And that's the key. He didn't really make any mistakes. There was this attempt to get him on the Keystone Pipeline. Oh, he said something about fracking or didn't. I mean, come on. It didn't work. Because all these it's going to affect him in Pennsylvania. And it didn't affect him in Pennsylvania. It won Pennsylvania by what? 80,000 votes? Oh, these pundits, they think they know everything. I don't think I know everything. It might sound like I do. I don't. But I don't. Oh, dear. But this is the thing, right? This is what's going on. And this is how Joe Biden won. With a very good campaign manager, an excellent campaign manager, with a lot of help that he didn't even seek out. People were begging him. He had all these groups, Chuck Roach's group, New Astro PAC, and all these other groups begging Joe Biden. And, they did not respond to these groups, and I thought that was really poor from them. Piss poor, actually. And they all pitched in and helped him anyway. And it was a coalition win. Joe Biden recognized that in his speech just 2 weeks ago today, actually. And bingo, said, black people, I'll have your back. All right, we'll see. We'll put that to the test very, very soon. And all in all, though, an incredible campaign for so many reasons. And coronavirus, wow, my goodness me. Just the two differences on that made all the difference for Joe Biden, too. Donald Trump not doing anything about it. Joe Biden making it clear he would. And he's already trying to do things about it. Once Emily Murphy decides to do the right thing and stop holding up a democratic elected process and a transition. Stop doing that. Because it looks bad on you. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.